Welcome back with my, I think, third or maybe even fourth, if you count the Bath video, visiting Bath. My third or fourth Divine Comedy related video in a row. This time it's my top 20 favorite songs by Neil Hannon, the Divine Comedy. I initially wanted to do a top 10, on my channel I did top 10 favorite songs by Bob Dylan, Beach Boys, Rolling Stones, things like that in the past. So I thought this is the kind of format I'm always going to go for. But then when I tried to, really make my top 10, there was always this, but this song and that song and, it's not like that. I'm not saying the Divine Comedy have more good songs or better songs than the Beach Boys or the Rolling Stones or those other artists where I did the top 10. But with those other artists, it was easier for me to pick my distinct 10 favorite songs without too much thoughts about, I forgot this one or I left this one out. With Divine Comedy, it's really strange that there's really even more than 20, I'd say. There's when I read through the track list and so on, it's really 30 or 40 songs that are really on a very concise, high level, which is probably 20% of his complete body of work so far. It's really hard to pin it down to 10 because I think this is of course my opinion, everything in this video, but my number 19, I don't like my number 8 that much more than my number 19 favorite Divine Comedy song, or I don't think that number 16 is that much worse than number 7, for example. I think his top 5 those are really the top-notch Neil Hannon songs. I would say they are really the Premier League, and the rest is whatever championship, whatever the league under Premier League in England is called, which is still a very competitive, great league. The best second league in the world, if we're talking about football now. But the top 5 are really a league on their own, so to speak. But let's start it before I bore you to death. My number 20, and I don't really like ties in those videos because they're a cheap excuse to get one more song in. But I have 2 ties at the start of the video because those are 2 songs from the same album, and I really couldn't decide. So my number 20 is a tie of 2 songs from the new album that was released a week ago. The album is called Rainy Sunday Afternoon, and number 20 is also Rainy Sunday Afternoon, the title track, but as a tie with The Man Who Turned Into a Chair. I think they're both very strong, and I couldn't really leave one of those 2 out because I think they're on the same level. If you want to, those songs from the new album, if you want to know more about my opinion of these songs, there's the previous video that was released on this channel when I made a long form 30-minute review video together with Murdoch from Murdoch's Music Minute. So I'm not going to tell you lots about the songs that are on this list from the new album. Just watch the review of the album video. Number 19 is the other tie. Again, I couldn't decide. 2 songs from the same album, and the only 2 songs in this list from that album. The album is my least favorite Divine Comedy album, so it's really interesting that even my least favorite Divine Comedy album has 2 songs in this list, which goes to show how concise and how constant Neil Hannon is as a songwriter, that he, even in periods of his output where I'm not the biggest fan of, he still manages to have a couple of really great songs. So he's not one of those songwriters who every 10 years he stumbles across a great song. But no, he's really, each year he writes good song after good song. On the Regeneration album, I don't think there's too many of those first-class Neil Hannon songs. But I think all in all, the songwriting isn't my problem with Regeneration. I think his songwriting on every album is pretty good. It's more the production on Regeneration that I'm not too fond of. But the 2 songs are Perfect Love Song, which is the song on that album that sounds the most like typical Divine Comedy, but to also have one typically regeneration kind of song in this video. I went as a tie. I went with "Love What You Do." "Love What You Do" is a fantastic song from the Regeneration album. My number 18 is a song that wouldn't have made my top 20 if you'd asked me a year or two ago. It's "Charmed Live" from my favorite Divine Comedy album, from Absent Friends. It's also the title track of the second best of album of the Divine Comedy. You know, I have no children as far as I'm aware. So it's always, you know, I don't have a first-hand experience or relationship with those songs about being a father. But more on that later, why I'm now really getting more and more a fan of this song. But you know, the thing is, now I can view it as a part one to a part two, and if I put those two together, it's really a very moving thing. And I think the thing about Neil Hannon's songwriting, that's to me like the thing that I'm most fan of is how he moves me with his music. You know, often his songs lyrics can be tongue in cheek and you know, a very dry British sense of humor often, but still even in those more funnier songs, he has really the power with his songwriting, especially the compositional aspect, you know, the melodies and the arrangements, to emotionally move me. And this song, although I'm not a father, a song about his daughter when she was a baby, you know, 2004, that was the time when she must have been a baby. Yeah, I can't relate to it firsthand, but it's, you know, it's brilliantly done, and it's a great song. Number 17 is also from the Absent Friends album. It's "Come Home Billy Bird." Fantastic third-person song. You know, it's really that's one of those more character study kind of songs where he invents a character and we follow him along. In this song, it's a businessman. You know, Neil Hannon also has a talent to write great songs about themes or persons, in this case, where you don't really, where you wouldn't think that you would find this interesting. You know, I never thought that I would be too interested of a pop in a pop song that describes the lifestyle of a businessman, a traveling businessman. But you know, that's also his genius, that he can write those songs, and you can, you know, you can like from reading a novel, you really get into the mindset and into the character, and you can relate to it. And this is a brilliant song. Also musically, again, it's not, you know, with Neil Hannon, it's not that he's just a great lyricist or just a great composer. His best songs, you know, it's both. It's wonderful melodies, but also great lyrics. Speaking of great lyrics and great music, the next song, number 16, is "The Summer House," thing from the Promenade album, 1994. So this is one of his earlier song masterpieces. It's just a wonderfully atmospheric song. You know, this is when he started to write these kind of 60s pastiches, these Scott Walker, Burt Bacharach kind of songs, but with a, you know, with a 90s makeover in a way. You know, it also sounds like a typically 90s song, but it has this elegance of those big songwriter arranger types of the 60s. Also someone like John Barry, the Bond movie composer. You know, this kind of cool music. "Summer House" is a wonderful song again. Also one of those moving songs. Those, you know, the songs are all kind of clever, but at the same time so emotional. And that's something that Neil Hannon, for example, is like. He's a better Damon Albarn. You know, he's the Damon Albarn, but with a heart, one could say. I'm not saying that Damon Albarn doesn't have a heart or empathy, but Neil Hannon has the capability to really put this across in his music much more, for example, than Damon Albarn, who's always seemed, especially in the 90s, very cold and cynical in a way. Later on that would change, but but he would never get he would never get good at writing emotional on the same level as Neil Hannon, for example. Number 15 is again a song from the new album, so I'm not going to talk too much about it since I made the review of that album 1 week ago. It's I Want You. Just one sentence about it. It's which is on many which can be said about many songs from the new album. It's a song that masterfully blends the political with the personal, which I think is in these times in most of our lives. That's a constant thing, that the political and the personal meet, and this is one of those songs. Number 14 is a big classic. Many Divine Comedy fans rate this very high. I too, since it's my number 14. Our Mutual Friend from Absent Friends. I remember back in the day, I wasn't that much a fan of Divine Comedy around the time when Absent Friends came out. I talked about that story a couple of times now on this channel, but I was in the late 90s. For a short while I was a fan of Divine Comedy, and then for 20 years or so I didn't really listen to them, and then like 2 or 3 years ago I really started to get into the post-90s catalog of the band. But I couldn't escape this song when it came out, because I'm here in Vienna, Austria, in all the indie discos, there's also the song At the Indie Disco by Divine Comedy, of course. But at the indie discos at the time, that was one of the big songs whenever that came out, 2004 or 2003 or whenever that was, Absent Friends. That was really a song that everyone liked, and that was played constantly by indie DJs back in the day. And I remember I liked it too at the time, but I wasn't really in a Divine Comedy phase, so I didn't bother to buy the Absent Friends album back then. But I was always happy when I heard the song being played by the DJ. Number 13 is Bath. The song Bath from Promenade. Is it the first song from the Promenade album? I think it's the album opener. What a wonderful song. I mean, Promenade, the album itself, and this is a quintessential Promenade song that encapsulates that album very nicely. Promenade is really an album that has the power to make music that makes you happy, that's very positive, but that still is has a deepness and a profoundness. I think that must be one of the most difficult things to pull off as a songwriter. And he was very young back then. He was like 24, 25 when he did those songs, and they sound so wise for his age. They sound so. He in interviews he always tells that he didn't know anything back then, and he was like a pretender and bluffing his way through everything, and wanted to come across as an intellectual and well-read guy, but wasn't really. But I think there's a deeper wisdom in those songs. It's not about that he can make songs about authors like book lovers and so on. That's maybe the pretentious part that he's referring to. But a song like Bath or other songs on Promenade, they really have this positive energy, but still are sad. Still those are kind of tearjerker songs, but with such a positive vibe, with such a beauty, and that's really the wonderful thing in general, but especially about this phase in his career. Next song, again from the new album, so keep it short. Achilles, first single from the new album, Achilles. Wonderful song, of course. Number 11, My Daddy's Car. This is from Liberation, the album before Promenade. And I think this is the first real big Neil Hannon classic. That's one of the first songs where he really found his formula. I mean, he doesn't really have a formula, but you know what I mean. He really found his identity as a songwriter, what really would become quintessentially Neil Hannon on this album, and especially with this song. So this is a very important song in his catalog, I think. This is where he really distinguished himself from a typical indie pop, indie rock, or what later would be labeled Brit pop 1 or 2 years after Liberation came out. but this is really its own thing. This is this chamber pop thing that, you know, also a band like Bell and Sebastian would represent. But this is even before Bell and Sebastian. You know, this came out 3 years before Bell and Sebastian even were founded. So this is, I think it's a great, and it's an important song also in his career. So the top 10. You know, imagine if I would have stuck to my original formula for those kind of videos and made a top 10, all the great songs that would not have been mentioned. You know, the video would start with this song, and I wouldn't have talked about Our Mutual Friend or Come Home Billy Bird, all those classics. So I think it's really right that this is a top 20, but now number 10, Becoming More Like Alfie. You know, it's really this song and Frog Princess and other songs from Casanova. I think it would be really tough to even dare to release them nowadays, because they would be so misunderstood, you know, from a political correctness point of view. But what people, I think, should always remember with songs like these, they were on Casanova, and Casanova was kind of a loose concept album where he steps into the shoes of such a guy, of such a you know, insecure macho persona, and I think with all good art that tries something like that, there's always a kernel of truth in it. And melodically, and the chorus and everything, you know, musically, this is a masterpiece. This is really a showcase for him as a great songwriter and arranger. And like I said, lyrically, you know, you have to keep in mind that he's really portraying, you know, this kind of guy, and it's not like this is 100% him. And the same applies for the next song, number 9, The Frog Princess. Again, musically, perfect pop song. You know, there's hardly anything I could criticize about the music on this song, and the lyrics again, you know, could be seen, especially nowadays, as misogynist. But again, I think you shouldn't take it too serious. The lyrical themes he went for with the Casanova album. Number 8, also from the Casanova album, but this time it's more a real sincere song, or sincere love song, and a harmless love song in that way. It's Songs of Love. It's just a wonderful song. I don't really have much to say about this song. It's just such a breezy, but also again deep and profound sounding song. Again, that's his genius in a way, that he can do things that sound simple and easy and like they were written in 10 minutes, but they still carry so much substance, so much weight. I think that's one of the most difficult and most underestimated aspects of great songwriting, to write something that this has this easy listening quality, but still is, you know, deep in a way. Number 7, again from the new album, so I don't really going to say much about it. It's in my review of the album how much I like this song. The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. You know, Murdoch didn't really like that song so much. I think it's one of his least favorites on the album, so we have a kind of a controversy about it. Number 6, I think this would be in most people's and also in Neil Hannon's top 5 or top 3 even. And I love it too, but it's, you know, it just came out my number 6, Lady of a Certain Age. From those character study third person songs he wrote, this is probably the best. Let me have a look if in my top 5 there's another of those. Yeah, I think this is my favorite third person song he ever did, but you know, in general I'm more drawn to the first person song, so maybe that's why it's missed out the top 5. But this is one of the best songs, I think. You know, we talked about it 1 or 2 minutes ago, the misogyny aspect of Casanova, which I think isn't really there since it's a kind of a parody of such a guy. But you know, with Lady of a Certain Age, that's one of the best songs a male songwriter ever wrote about a female person. One of the songs with the most empathy and the most respect for a lady, you know, for a lady of a certain age, that he wrote about in this song. And you know, he described why this song works so well in a recent interview, and that's 100% the reason, I would say, that he doesn't really judge what's happening in the song. He really doesn't make the mistake to go sentimental, or to say that's a bad person or that's a good person. He doesn't really explain the reasons for why she is like she is. He just retells the story of this lady of a certain age, and it's a wonderful song. Again, the music part and the lyric part both are 10 out of 10 for me. Number 5 is again one of those songs that where the political and the personal meet. This time it's really serious. It's maybe one of his most sincere and most serious and most emotional songs. It's Sunrise. I think it's the only song from Fin de Siècle that I have on this list. I was never too much a fan of that album. I also don't really like the production of the studio version. You know, when I want to listen to this song, I mostly listen or watch the version. It's on YouTube as well from the Absent Friends release show, the live version of Sunrise. Have I mentioned it before? Sunrise, the song about the Troubles. He of course is from Northern Ireland, grew up in the 70s, 80s, and he wrote it in the 90s when finally peace, was starting, and that's one of the most touching songs about the hope after the end of a war, when a civil war in this case, seems to end, and there's new hope. And the song is, I'm lucky enough not to have grown up in such an environment, but like with the song Charmed Life, I'm not a father, but I can feel the emotion of a song like Charmed Life, and I can certainly feel the emotion in the song Sunrise. It's one of the best songs about this subject, and there are a couple of great songs by great artists about the Troubles, about Northern Ireland thing, by artists like U2 and Stiff Little Fingers, whatever. There's lots of songs about that, but this is probably not probably. I would say this is certainly the best of those songs. Number 4 is one of the big commercial hit songs, and maybe this is not a song that moves me or anyone in an emotional way, but this song is in the top 5. I wanted to have one of those songs in the top 5, one of those songs where he really shows us what a great craftsman he also can be when he wants, this was the phase when he wanted to have hits, and this is one of the 2 bigger hits he had in the UK charts. It's not National Express. National Express would be my honorable mentions. It's Something for the Weekend. This is just a brilliantly written song. And the whole Casanova thing, it really becomes very clear in this song. Frog Princess becoming more like Alfie. Those are songs where the black sense of humor, the parody aspect is very ambiguous, but it's Something for the Weekend. It's pretty obvious, at least if you listen until the end, that he's the buffoon, that he's a character and he's the fool. And so it's also a clever song. This isn't really one of his emotional big songs, but this is one of his most clever songs, and it's a fantastic Britpop, Cool Britannia anthem. That was the phase when he wanted to be a Britpop star, and it's a bit like a Common People rewrite. It's like a new version of Pulp's Common People. The atmosphere of the song, but it's about as good as Common People in my opinion. Number 3 is the title track of my favorite Divine Comedy album, Absent Friends. Absent Friends. Again, this is a perfectly constructed song. It's not a song that tries to be a hit song, but this is also a clever song, a song that really, in this case, he wants to craft a perfect album opener that encapsulates the album. Absent Friends is a great album, and the title track of that album is the perfect song to lure you into those stories he's going to tell on that album, and it's one of his most shameless Scott Walker pastiches, I want to say. Number 2, and my top 2 favorite Divine Comedy songs, I would say, are also in my top, let's say, 25 songs of all time by anyone. And number 2 is the reason why Charmed Life, made it into the list. Like I said a month ago, Charmed Life would never have been in my top 20 list. But this is kind of the sequel to Charmed Life, and I much prefer to Charmed Life. It's Invisible Thread from the new album. And now Charmed Life makes, now it really starts to make sense to me, because Charmed Life was when his daughter was, like I said, was a baby, and now she moves out, she spreads her wings and flies away, or whatever the lyrics are in the song. Now she must be like 20 years old, I guess, and it's from a perspective of the same father who wrote Charmed Life, but 20 years later. I had to change places because the battery was empty, so now I'm recharging the battery here, the camera battery. Melodically and lyrically, one of his best songs, and again, it's one of those very, very emotional songs and sad songs that make you feel better. It's a song that can make you cry, but at the same time it can make you smile because it's so beautiful. And the same applies for my number 1, but before we go to the number 1, the honorable mentions. Like I said, National Express would be probably a special mention, because I like to travel on National Express. So I'm like once a year, I'm in the UK for 1 or 2 weeks, and one of my favorite ways to travel the UK is on National Express buses. I even prefer it to trains for some reason. So I can really relate to the song, and it's again a great pop song, one of his most pop-sounding pop songs. Other honorable mentions would be Jean Soaked Boy, again great pop song. The Last Time I Saw the Old Man from the new album. Everybody Knows Except You from short album about love. It's a great ballad, I would say. And a special mention, of course, My Lovely Horse, which is maybe kind of an unofficial song, but hilarious song, and it's its own kind of Divine Comedy classic, I would say. My number 1 song is, I would say, of course, because it's a very logical number 1 song, I would say it's Tonight We Fly. Like I said, top 2 songs are both, I would say, in my top 20, top 25 favorite songs of all time. And I would say Tonight We Fly is probably a top 10 of all time song. For me, this is again this thing that she's really one of the best at. I think he's one of the best songwriters ever in terms of this quality to make songs that sound light in one way and easygoing, but still are so profound and are so beautiful in a way. Again, this is a song that can make you sad, it evokes sadness, but at the same time you're so happy while you listen to it, and also even for minutes after you listen to it, you're on a kind of a high, because it's really music for the soul and for the heart in a way, yet at the same time it's clever and intelligent. So this is a song for the ages, Tonight We Fly. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, bye.